Welcome back to the Daily Drum on WHUR and Sirius XM, channel 141. This is the Insight segment. I'm Harold Fisher. Tonight, legal literacy. There is a well-known legal principle that says ignorance of the law is not an acceptable defense. My guests tonight say far too many Black families are torn apart because of a lack of awareness and unintentional legal violations. This family of attorneys is on a mission to combat mass incarceration through legal education, and they've come up with a rather unique approach. My guests are attorney Lonnie Johnson and attorney Eartha Johnson. They are also married and have a family of attorneys. We'll talk about that briefly as well. Eartha and Lonnie, thank you so much for joining this important conversation.
Well, thank you for having us.
Absolutely.
You've created a game called Crime, No Crime, and we're going to get into that in just a bit. But first, let me share some fast facts from the Bureau of Justice Statistics. African Americans make up more than 2/3 of people serving life sentences. 40% of the population on death row are Black. African Americans make up 1/3 of those executed between 1976 and 2022. And over 30% of people on probation or parole are Black. Both of you are legal veterans. I'm sure those statistics aren't surprising to you, but you believe that many of these who have run afoul of the law have done so because of a lack of understanding. I'll start with you, Eartha. Why do you believe that is the case?
Not just believe, I know it's the case. As you started off earlier, because we are a family of lawyers, we get calls when people are in trouble. And time we get these calls, and people either don't know they've committed a crime or they don't appreciate the gravity of their conduct. And as we go through the today's interview, I'm going to give you some scenarios where people don't realize that they don't know the law. We don't know what we don't know. We say ignorance of the law, as you said, is no excuse. But in America, it's 100% reality that's led to the mass incarceration of far too many. We have examples of people, just to answer it a little bit more. We in one scenario was a young guy, and this is what really started me thinking about crime, no crime. He was 17-year-old, and he was his friends, it was after school, and they wanted to go break in somebody's house, not little violent kids, but what they wanted to do is go get PlayStations and all of that from somebody that went to their school that was on vacation. He had the mindset that, no, first of all, my mother would kill me, but I would lose my scholarship. So he said he didn't want any parts of it. So that was what he said. But in actuality, what actually happened is he just say you're in the L. He's at the top of the line or I, and he drops them off in the middle, just say a T, so they can go and do whatever they're going to do. And he keeps going home. He did not realize it's just because he facilitated that little bit that he could be charged with whatever these young kids got charged with. And it was clear that he didn't think he was breaking the law because he had told him up front, I don't want to be involved.
So you're talking about, I guess, what would commonly be called guilt by association.
Yeah, aiding and abetting, is various things for the law. But right, the gist of it is, I guess, exactly what you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
And that was one of those situations that you knew he wouldn't have done it. Lonnie had one not too long ago.
And the problem with that is most people think of aiding and abetting or guilt by association in the context of when everything goes right, when they go down to that house to rob someone and they go in, they get whatever they're going to get, they leave and everything is fine. If they go in that house and it just so happens to be a homeowner there and someone dies, the homeowner can shoot one of the people coming in the house. if someone dies, then you have a total the situation where that person who didn't want to be involved is now charged with felony murder. And that's a lot more serious. But we'll get to examples. But
talk to me a little bit about the influence, for example, of social media and incorrect information, misinformation about the law. I mean, on any given day, you can scroll through social media, Instagram, Facebook, whatever, and everyone is a legal expert, even if they don't have a Juris Doctorate or any real legal expertise. How harmful is that?
Extremely. And I'm 65 years old. When I was young, I did stupid things too. But fortunately, because we didn't have social media, it wasn't as, those things weren't publicized as much. And people feel the freedom to put everything out there on the internet. And as a result, you get a lot of misinformation, and you also get way too much information in terms of things people will publish that otherwise would never have gotten them in trouble. I just had a case within the last 3 weeks where a person, he was dating this woman. He was, I think he's like 22, 23, and found out that she started messing around with her ex. So he says, she's cheating on me. He goes into her computer and uploads a video of him and her having sex, sends it to the ex-boyfriend to say, making his point that this is what we're doing, and didn't realize. And then we have a question in the game about it. Is revenge porn is an actual crime. It's a felony. And now he's facing felony charges for revenge porn. And he just never thought that was a problem. He thought, I'm going to put it out here. I'm going to make a point, and I'm going to show her. Well, she got the last laugh.
That is really fascinating to me. And I would imagine that over the decades, how you can break the law has become much more, complex, where it's one thing, okay, in the sense of the revenge porn thing, there's the common sense part where, okay, you just don't do that because it's not a good thing to do. But the complexities of the law also suggest not only is it a thing to do that is not a nice thing to do, but it is also breaking the law.
All right. And we have a number, there are 250 different cards in here. We try to touch on things that are realistic, that are relevant to today's society. I'll give you another example. 13-year-old girl, she notices she's starting to develop. So she takes a photo to send it to her best friend, who is also 13, a topless photo, and says with a little caption, pretty soon I'm going to need a bra. Just a gag type thing. Not knowing that by taking that picture, she is now guilty of production of child pornography. That can be up to 10 years in jail and lifetime registration as a sex offender. Then by sending that over the internet, that's another offense, distribution of child pornography, which is also punishable, but by 20 years in jail, lifetime registration as a sex offender. And then her friend, when she receives that, if she leaves it on her computer and possession of child pornography, that's 10 years in jail, lifetime registration as a sex offender. Now, part of the reason we included that card was we understand that parents are saying to their kids, don't take those type pictures, don't send those type pictures. And in many cases, that's not enough. Especially some of our young boys are asking girls, send me pictures of you. We give them additional weapon to say, no, not only is just mom and daddy saying it's not a good thing to do. Now I know I can be charged with a crime. And not only being charged with a crime, I could be registered as a sex offender for the rest of my life. And now you give him more ammunition to say to him, no, I can't do that. And plus, I'm concerned about you because if I send it to you and it's on your phone, now you can be charged with a crime and lifetime registration as a sex offender. So those are the things that people don't understand. We try and get it out there.
So help me with my law and order legal degree, where in the same kind of example that you're using, it's one thing, it's bad enough if a teenager sends, that topless photo, as you mentioned, to the boyfriend or the girlfriend who lives in the same community. But what if they send it to somebody who lives in another state? Does that now become a federal issue because it has crossed state lines?
Well, this is a federal crime to start with.
Yeah.
The possession, distribution, child pornography, and production of child pornography, those are federal crimes. If you did it to someone across the street, it's a federal crime. There's a federal statute out there that criminalizes that.
This is really, it's actually, quite frightening, because at some point, and we've had these conversations certainly over the years, whether they have to do with Black Lives Matter issues or just issues within families about, and you all have had girls and boys who are now, of course, adults. But, Lonnie, there has been, of course, the talk
exactly
in dealing with police officers. And, I could certainly argue it is just important to have the talk with boys, or girls, I should say, as it is to have the talk with girls. But when did you first decide that this form of education was a good way to help educate young people, Eartha?
It was one of those things where you just start thinking about it. I take a lot of things personal. So when I get those calls, or we get those calls, I'm laying in bed at night like, why didn't they know that? Why didn't they know that? And then I start thinking, because it frustrates me. I'm like, that was just really stupid. But then I thought, well, how would they know? And that's what got it going. Unless we teach them, they won't know the law. If you think about it, where do people learn the law? We don't learn it at church. We don't learn it at school. And now I say, if you don't have crime, no crime, you don't even learn it at home. So yes, ignorance of the law is no excuse, but who's out there teaching them the law? And I started thinking about, well, we together, how can we come up with a fun game that's entertaining, but they get it? So our game is very intentional. It wasn't designed to just be a game. We were very intentional. When I say the way, as we'll talk about it later, as the game goes, only the most severe charges are listed. And we did that because most people don't appreciate the gravity of the conduct. 100%, I would say, of the people that call us do not appreciate the gravity of the conduct. So I didn't want to put something minor like assault when this is aggravated or something to that nature. I wanted them to understand the gravity. And that's why, as you play the game, if they don't name the most serious charge, the other team can steal it. And we'll go through those, later. But the gist of it, yes, we created it because it was the sleepless nights. It was the realization that nobody's teaching people the law.
Yeah. Hold that point. We are going to take a break. But don't forget, you can hear this and every edition of the Daily Drum Insight segment via podcast on WHUR.com. The original Quiet Storm with Raheem Devon is next on WHUR. I'm Harold Fisher. This conversation continues on Sirius XM channel 141 and 96.3 HD2 in just a few seconds. Welcome back to the Daily Drum on Sirius XM channel 141. I'm Harold Fisher. We continue our conversation tonight about educating Black families about criminal law and what can happen when you don't know what you don't know. My guests are attorneys Eartha Johnson and attorney Lonnie Johnson. They are the creators of the game Crime, No Crime. I want to talk a little bit more about what kind of led you to this place. We know that systemic racism is also at play here. Talk to me about the reality for Black and brown people, especially young Black men. And I'm sure, Lonnie, to drill down just a little bit more, talk to me about the talk that you had with your children.
Well, we all go through and make sure they understand. You have certain, like my son, he wanted to wear his hair braided, and we're out in a suburb of Houston, Texas. He had the long hair, I wanted to play his music loud in his car. And I told him, look, you have the right to do those things. And those are your rights. But understand, there are sometimes consequences associated with the things you choose to do. And so the one thing I don't want is you to be dead right. And so understand this. You will be stopped more. Is it right? No. Is it fair? No. But that's the reality of life. And so a lot of things in this game, we've put it out there so people know what the things they can be charged with, how bad it can be, because we don't want them to be surprised when they find out, oh, I can get 25 years for this, when they thought it was something that's minor. So we want to paint the picture to show them how bad it can be, because we understand in some jurisdictions, the fact that they are Black is going to mean that they're going to be the ones charged with, they're going to get the 20-year sentence. Someone else doing the same thing is going to get a probation, and that judge is going to run for re-election and say, I do an average of 10-year sentence. Well, yeah, it's because we're taking the brunt of it. And so I want them to understand how bad it can be so they don't end up getting themselves in that situation.
Mm-hmm. Eartha, is that same conversation, the talk, different with girls than it would be for the boys?
Well, I think the conversation is not different, but we always say the reality is different. The girls, they get it. We talk, and I think, I ended up in corporate America, but I always wanted to be a criminal lawyer. It was just that the dynamics at the time. So when talking to the kids, it's been an everyday conversation. It wasn't this point in time where we have that talk, but we talked about racism from when they were little bitty kids all the way up. So they really understood it. And ours is different because we knew the law. And when cases would come on TV, we would talk about those cases, look at the dynamics. Did you remember that this happened last week or this happened last month? And remember what happened to that person that weren't the same color. So we've always highlighted that throughout their lives. So it wasn't one moment in time that we had a talk.
Mm-hmm. And with the girls, oftentimes they have to understand the stereotypes that are associated with young Black girls and and Black women in general. She can have the same conversation that one of her peers would have, and she's an angry Black woman. And so she's going to be treated differently. And so they just need to understand that, be mindful of it, and be prepared for the outcomes.
Mm. I mentioned, and I joked earlier about, watching Law and Order. Big fan of that show, the entire franchise. But from your opinions, are there any dramas, legal dramas, that are, in your mind, just plain wrong, or are there are there those that you may watch or pay attention to that may suggest, well, this may be a show that you may need to listen to?
Well, I watch all the crime shows like you do. And for the most part, they're on the mark for the most part. The only ones I think don't listen to are those real TV shows where you got the actors that are the lawyers and all of that, because half the time, whatever they be talking about in these TV shows is not even real. It's not even the real law, how the law works, but it's so dramatized. But far as like, I love Snapped, and they're just going over why the person got killed. I love the first 48 because they're walking through the process. It's just so many. I grew up on Perry Mason. That's why I wanted to be a lawyer, watching Perry Mason. So, I think, for the most part, they don't really teach you the law. You pick up some things, and a lot of that is specific to that state or the law there. We try to make it different because what we try to do is, what is the law in the majority of states? That's what the answers are on our cards. So, it's none I would steer away from except for TV. TV, those are just, they're usually wrong all the time, 100% of the time. I'm not going to say 100, but at least 99% of the time. They just come up with something that looks good on TV.
Mm-hmm. Talk to me about your family. About the children. First of all, how many children do you have? Just kind of give me the whole lineage bit there.
Okay, we have three children. Our oldest daughter, she's a criminal district court judge. She started off her career as a prosecutor. She left the prosecutors and did criminal defense for a little bit. And then she decided to go to the public defender's office, and I think she loved it there. And an opportunity came. Somebody was leaving their seat and thought she would be a good candidate, so she ran for judge. That one right there, we knew she was going to be a judge. Not a judge, but we knew she was going to practice law. She just went through an investigator last week, and they got up and talked about the kids when they were little. She would put them on trial. They had to put on evidence and all of that stuff. So that was kind of interesting. The middle one is our little free spirit. She started off in criminal defense, and then she went to the prosecutor's office, and she just left to go to the public defender's office. So, they got a lot of law behind them. And then our little baby, he does criminal defense.
That 40-year-old baby.
Yeah, 40-year-old. He does criminal defense, and he loves it. And we actually have a son-in-law that actually, he kind of chimes in and out and helps out when he can, when we're doing different things. And he's a law degree too. He's done a lot of corporate. He's more like us on the corporate side.
That is just that is amazing, and I think it is so laudable that this is part of the family legacy, and certainly I salute you all for having this legal DNA in your family, especially, dare I say, on this side of the law.
Yeah.
So I guess, one of the things that really sticks in my mind, and I think it really goes back to, my goodness, and Lonnie, you said this before. You did stupid things when you were a kid. I did too, but I don't have a criminal record. But now it just seems to me that there are so many legal potholes that you can step in that could get you, as they say in the streets, jacked up.
Exactly.
And I think that, why do you think that Black families do not have a full understanding of how legally dangerous the world is right now?
Well, I think it's a number of things. In part, we all want to be safe. We want to feel we're safe in our communities. So on the one hand, we're trying to welcome law enforcement because we want to be safe from the elements out there that will do us harm. At the same time, we know that in many cases we're over-policed and we're treated differently by the system once we get into the system. I mean, you've seen all the news reports when someone has a mental breakdown, and they have, most of us in our family, we have someone who has some type of mental issue, and you call them to try and get to calm that person down because they might be doing some harm at that moment or threatening some harm, and the person ends up dead. Well, you're not trying to get them killed. You just want them to get a little help. And so, we have these issues within our communities where we're afraid to call the police for help, but at the same time, we want their help. And so you come up with things like defund the police. No one wants to defund the police. We want a police system that works for us. And unfortunately, in many ways, this system was not designed to work for us. And we see that more and more when we see us become more and more victims of the system as opposed to participants in the system. And so that's what we're trying to do, is arm people to say, look, we want to be working with the police. We want to, be partners with them. But by the same token, understand here are some traps out there that you might not be aware of that can get you on the other side of the law. And we understand there are some people out there that are going to do criminal acts, and they have no problem doing that. We're not going to reach those folks. But I'm more interested in those folks who they do things thinking it's minor or thinking it's no crime at all, only to find out that they have committed a crime, and sometimes serious. And I'll interject another case. A guy calls me, his mother calls me and says, I need your help finding a lawyer for my son. Now, this is in middle America. And she said, they've charged him with raping this white girl, and I'm not gonna let him take my son. I don't have a lot of money, but I'm gonna find a lawyer for him and get him. I need, I'll put my house up, mortgage my house to get him the defense he needs. I said, okay, tell me what happened. Well, he told him, I had sex with this girl, but I didn't rape anyone. And turns out he was charged with statutory rape.
And she told him too.
The girl said, I didn't have, and he didn't rape me. And the mother said, no, but her father is pushing this. I'm like, I don't care what the father says. If she said he didn't rape her and he said he didn't rape her, why is it they're charging him? She said, well, he saw her ID, said she was 18, but they're saying now that she's only 16. And unfortunately, I had to tell her, look, I'm not going to tell you to abandon your son, but understand your son is going to jail because the law is clear. If you have sex with someone without consent, it's rape. And the law is also clear that a person who's underage cannot provide consent. So when he told them, I had sex with this girl, he said, I had sex with someone without consent. And in that case, he didn't even know he committed a crime. He thought he was protected because he saw ID that said she was 18. And so those are the people that we're trying to help, to say, look, be careful, be mindful that the law is not always going to be on your side. And you need to understand where you can run afoul of the law, sometimes unknowingly or unwittingly.
I want to talk a little bit more about the game. How does the game work, and what legal topics or issues does it cover?
Crime, no crime. The game, just kind of get a visual of the Family Feud. It's not that, but just think of two teams with up to 4 people. The first team up, they'll get a question. The first person on that team will get a question, crime or no crime. And I'll go through it with you in a second. If you get that part of that question right, your team will get 20 seconds to confer as to what's the most severe thing you could get charged with. If your team don't name the most, and if you get that right, you'll get 5 points. If your team doesn't name the most severe thing, team 2 could steal the follow-up question is, now what's the crime? And now you got to name the most severe thing. If you don't name it, team 2 can steal it. And that it goes back and forth. The things it covers is misdemeanors, felonies, police searches and seizures, police interrogations, because those are the things that our kids or people need to know. So those are the areas. It's 250 cards, as Lonnie said, and they all are real life scenarios that cover those areas to make sure they get it. Some of the points we try to ask the question in different ways because we want to know that at the end of this game, you know every variation. And if that kind of situation looks you in the face, you know right away to run because it's going to be a crime, a really serious crime.
Yeah, go ahead, Lonnie.
You have some things that are crimes and some are no crime. The no crime questions are really there to try and teach you areas of rights, teach you rights. For example, one question says, staring at the wall and refusing to answer questions during police interrogation. Well, that's a no crime. But on the back of the card where we provide the answers, we explain you have a Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination. So you don't have to answer those questions that might incriminate you. Furthermore, you have a Sixth Amendment right to counsel. So if you say, I would like a lawyer, questioning should stop unless you voluntarily start back talking again. But if you start back talking, then they can start back asking you questions. So in many cases, we want to, at the time we're teaching them what the law is, we're also teaching them what the rights are with some of these no crime questions.
That's interesting because that is a subtlety that I think most people do not know. I didn't know that. I thought that once you asked for a lawyer, yeah, I knew that the questioning should stop. But once you start talking again, they can start talking to you. So now that I did not know.
And people hate silence. I mean, if you just sit there, people start to feel uncomfortable and they want to start talking again. And that happens far too often.
And even in the thing, we've done this enough where when you ask that question, crime or no crime, I'm like flabbergasted at all the people that think it's a crime for them not to answer those questions. They just don't know. Even though you tell them you have a right to remain silent, they don't get it. It's not registering in their head, and they will start saying all this because they feel like they have to.
So let me ask you this, and again, this goes back to some of the dramas that we see, on television. If police start questioning you, or they say, why don't you come downtown and talk to us and help us out with this situation, this crime, do you go? And if you decide not to go, is that a crime?
Well, I always take this approach. And when people ask me questions about, what are police officers allowed to do, in most cases, I still use a rule of thumb. If they're asking you for permission, it's probably because they don't have the right to do it. But it's always important to be respectful and be courteous in your responses. So if someone is asking you to go downtown, you say, with all due respect, I prefer not to, unless you're telling me I'm under arrest and I need to go, I have to go downtown. Always approach it from the standpoint of being respectful, of being courteous. And if it's something that they have the right to do, your objection is not going to stop them from doing it. If it's something they don't have the right to do without your permission, you've lodged your objection. And then after you object, and there's a question in the game about, a police officer asking you to search your car. And you say, with all due respect, I prefer that you not. Now, there are certain cases where they have the right to search. There are other cases when they don't have the right to search.
What's the difference?
Once you lodge your objection, and if they say, well, I'm going to search it anyway, step to the side and let them search, because they're doing it without your permission. And you can raise that. If you're in a situation where they don't have the right to search, you've already made your objection. They're doing it over your objection. And so you're going to be able to get whatever they find. If they find or plant something, it's going to be able to get thrown out anyway. But just don't give them permission to do something if you don't know that they absolutely have the right to do it. So I normally just take the approach to say, respectfully decline. And if they proceed, step out to the side and let them do what they have to do.
And Lonnie brings up an interesting point that you talked about earlier, that conversation. A lot of times it's not even just that conversation. We have rights. And one of those rights in most states now is you can carry a gun, you can have a gun. But with those rights, as a minority, they always paint that picture. They're scared. They had a gun. Know that once you have that gun and they come and they say, do you have a gun in your car? Now they got a right to search you, search your car. If you didn't have that gun, they didn't have that right to search you. So it's not always good to have a gun in your car. And not only that, that picture that's painted a lot of times is, I was in fear of my life. I had a gun. We're giving them that because we have a gun. Is it unfair that we're treated differently? No. But is it a reality? Yes. Do we want to be dead right? No. So think about, do I really need this gun? Is it that important to have this gun? Because with the gun, I'm going to give up certain rights.
That brings me to another point. In the state of Maryland, for example, let us say you are a legal gun owner. And I think this is important. I know we've spoken about educating young people, minors, but I think that this is important for adults as well.
By all means.
But in the state of Maryland, let's say if you own a gun and you are going to the gun range from your home, the law says that the ammunition and the weapon must be separated. Mm-hmm. So you may have a handgun in the glove compartment, but the magazine, if that magazine has rounds in it, the magazine must be in the trunk. Mm-hmm. Okay. So if someone is abiding by the law in transporting a handgun to the gun range and they get pulled over, if they get pulled over for speeding, running a stop sign, whatever, should they tell the officer that there is a gun, in the vehicle, even if it is out of sight?
I would never volunteer the information. Mm-hmm. If they ask, I would give them the information, but I would not volunteer the information. The same as Texas. They have a rule that, we are open carry state. But one of my son's cases, they were somewhere and they had the gun where you could see it. It has to be in a holster. So that you got to know the regulations in your state as it pertains to that open carry or registered guns. So.
Mm-hmm. That's good to know.
And anytime you're dealing with guns and state gun laws, we should always remember, and there's a question in the game that deals with this, states can grant you certain rights. Mm-hmm. States cannot trump federal law. So you might have a license to carry a weapon, but that does not allow you to carry that weapon onto federal property. So if you have your licensed handgun and you pull onto the post office lot to go and get your mail, by bringing that gun onto federal property, now you've violated federal law. So people have to understand what the laws are that they're dealing with so as not to run afoul of.
And see, again, I think this is such an important conversation because law-abiding citizens who do not understand the subtleties of the law can get into a lot of legal trouble. And that is an absolutely perfect example, Lonnie, where yes, you may have the right to conceal carry. And you have a post office box like you just suggested. And you bend over because your post office box is on the lower level and someone sees a legally holstered pistol and you are not a law enforcement officer. And it just so happens that a police officer is there to also pick up his mail and you're done.
Mm-hmm. Or imagine a scenario where a police officer knows that you know something about a crime. Maybe you're the innocent, law-abiding citizen, but you have a friend who did something, and they think you know about it. Well, you go in get your mail, and now you carry the weapon. Let's say you got to the post office, you took the weapon out, put it in your glove compartment as you parked in the parking lot, went inside, got your mail, came back. Now they can stop you. There, you have a weapon on federal property. That's a federal charge. And now they can make a deal with you. Tell us what you know about what your friend did, or you're going to face federal charges. So we just have to be mindful as to what the law is. And that's what this game is designed to do. Teach you the law so that you don't put yourself in those situations.
Have you had an opportunity to kind of test the game out and get some feedback as to how effective it is in educating families?
Now, the game has been out now for about a year, and before that we spent a 6-month test period where we put it out there and had people give us feedback on it. We made some changes to it because we want it to be as good as it can be. And we've received so much feedback over the last year from people who played the game. They always tell us how much fun it is at all different levels and all different age groups. But we've had so many people call us and say, you know what, a lot of this stuff we just didn't know, and it's going to change how we go forward. And one of the most, what I call the unintended consequences, we've gotten a number of calls where someone said, my kids played this game and they want to study law now. A lot of them want to be lawyers. And that was, I mean, we're always for that, but that was an unintended consequence.
And I'll give you one, and I'm just smiling because this week, I had given the game, to the sheriff's department where they got some games, for their community thing. And he sent me a video that they made. I don't know if they sent you a copy of it or not, where they made it. I didn't know anything. I didn't have anything to do with it, where they have different officers talking about the impact of the game, how, the fun they had and what they learned from it. So if you get a compliment like that from a sheriff's department, Harris County at that, that's a pretty big thing. And I was just glad. And he thanked me and he told me that it was just amazing. They did it with children, I should say children. A lot of times it's teenagers. And then they did it with the sheriff's department, large as they are. And he said it was just amazing experience and what they learned and what they talked about. So I know it has an impact. You can't help but to learn. It's 250 cards. If you know everything, well, nobody knows everything, but you're going to learn something from that game. That's guaranteed.
I think that's a great place to end this conversation. You can find out more about this game on crimenocrime.com. That's easy to remember, crimenocrime.com. Eartha and Lonnie Johnson, thank you both so much for spending some time with us. This is really, really helpful, and this is long overdue. Great idea. Thank you both so very much.
And thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you. We really appreciate it. Just getting the word out and educating people any way we can.
Absolutely. I really appreciate it. That is the Daily Drum for this Wednesday, January 15th, 2025. I'm Harold Fisher. Good night.